Welcome to Barns and Farms with a side of cornbread. This is Shayne Hollifield. If it lives on a farm, sleeps in a barn, or loves Southern food, then we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Barns and Farms with a side of cornbread. Today we are talking to Susan Welch. You like to go by Susie, is that correct?
That's true. Yes.
All right. Episode 9 is Mustangs and Warriors, Building Trust After the Battlefield. So, Susie, let's talk a little bit about how you got to North Carolina. I know you said North Carolina isn't just where you live, it's where your life was forged. And what does home mean to you now?
That's a really big question. So I was born in Bakersfield, California, and my parents moved up to northern Idaho when I was starting high school. And I had a couple of talks with my grandfather, who was prior Air Force. He flew B-52s in the Korean War.
Amazing.
And so he had told me, he goes, if you can't do what I do because you're a woman and there's restrictions and parameters, then you need to become a Marine. You'll have bragging rights for the rest of your life. And I went, I don't know what that means. Whatever, Grandpa.
Hoo-ha, or whatever they say.
Yeah, I don't know. That's cool. Whatever. And a few years go by, and after high school, I was working at a couple of questionable places while getting my associates, and had moved out to Illinois, and I signed up to the recruiter's office. I tried the Air Force. It didn't work. And so I signed up for the Marine Corps, and kind of my life started at that point. I went to Japan for a short time and then came back to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So that's kind of where a lot of my military career has been, out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. That's where I deployed to Afghanistan as part of the Lioness. So that's kind of where it began.
Yes. We'll come back to Japan because that sounds interesting. But for the listeners unfamiliar with the Lioness, like the female engagement teams, what were they and what experience did that demand of you as a woman?
So the Lioness team started in the Iraq wars, and they were females that were pulled from different units to search female terrorists. A lot of the time, terrorists would dress as females, hide weapons, bombs, and go through security checkpoints. And there you would have casualties. So they pulled these different women from other units because women weren't allowed in the infantry at the time. They weren't allowed to serve on the front lines. Yet they did. And these women went out and they would search and they would come back. And so it kind of developed as time went on. It kind of honed its skills to becoming an all-female unit that you were selected for exclusively, trained by prior infantry guys, and taught how to integrate into a more infantry ground unit. That was an interesting time. There were only 2 of us that went out at a time. We were teams of 2 females, and we would get attached to infantry battalions. So the rest were all dudes. And it was a colorful time.
I'm sure it was.
Not much showers. I mean, you didn't shower. You had to learn how to use the bathroom standing up. There weren't a lot of resources out there, so you became very independent. You could structure how well your life was going to go or not. And I loved our unit. My unit was a really good unit, and we really proved ourselves, my counterpart and I. And it wasn't until we had our first combat engagement that they really felt we were worth our weight.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So sort of being a country girl does not hurt.
It doesn't. No, it definitely doesn't. And really knowing your grit and being able to step forward into the uncomfortable situation is really what matters. And being able to meet the teeth that you know are coming with bigger teeth. I know that there's some guys out there who question certain things about my service, but at the same time, I already know what I did. I was there. I was conscious.
Yeah.
And the times I was unconscious, well, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
who knows? But you know what? That's very commendable. And I mean, I thank you for your service. I mean, I think it's amazing that these Lioness teams are out there because they don't get mentioned much.
They don't.
And I think that's a shame.
They don't. And there's one female that I have to mention. There wasn't a lot of female mentors in the Marine Corps. The ratio of female to male is very low, let alone a combat female. And while I was in boot camp and when I got dropped from boot camp because I broke both my legs,
Oh, no.
and I insisted that they hold me in training until I could recover. And so instead of 13 weeks of training, I had 9 months
Oh, wow.
of being in training. But there was one female drill instructor, and she came and visited me with my broken legs. And I found out some of her story, that she had been part of the Lioness, the original teams, and she has her own story. But she really encouraged me, and she's always been very motivating and towing the line of what being a Marine really means and what it embodies, and that it's not just a brainwashing situation, but it's truly an identity that you take on. It's that you're responsible for, and having integrity and honesty are what keep you alive. You don't have time for the petty. You don't have time for who's looks this way or does this other thing. You have time to go, can I trust what you say? Will you be there? Have you prepared? Are you ready? And so those are the things that count, and I've learned that those same things apply in horsemanship
And in life,
and
in
in life.
general,
Yeah,
for sure. So
for
that
sure.
medical setback really was a blessing to you, is what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without that, I don't think I would have had such a good mentor. And I ran into her while I was training to go out with the female engagement team, and she was like, "Oh, hey, good to see you." And so it was a different environment to see her in, and then watch her success as she grew and climbed the ladder in the Marine Corps as well. But I won't ever forget her.
That's amazing, and it's always good to hear a women empowering women's story. I mean, that's not even what this is about, and I'm glad it came out in there.
For
I'm gonna jump
sure.
back for a little bit because there's one question that I did wanna ask you. How did becoming a mother in North Carolina shift your identity after serving in combat?
So my son was born in 2010 and I deployed in 2011. So that was I was right on the cusp of divorce. We were separated. And so I had to allow him to take my son.
Which is a
And
hard decision,
it was a
believe me.
very hard
Yeah.
decision. And so I kind of had to learn very quickly that I needed to check out. Check that box that, one, he's safe, he's gonna stay alive, and he's gonna get food and shelter. And I had to leave the rest to God because I couldn't worry about that overseas. And the way it impacted me, I think the most was when we were triaging during a mass casualty event. There was a situation with one of the Marines that passed away, and I had a thought of, "Oh my gosh, like, this is someone's son. This could be my son." And that's always stuck with me, and so even through that deployment, I went and I saw his mom. I went and saw his family, and that was very healing to me in the sense of, this could have been my son, this is more personal, and so I cherish that
Yeah.
with my memory bracelet. And but that was really it, and I feel like it made me more compassionate during the deployment to the kids.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe not so much to the Marines.
Well,
But at the same time, it changed my scope of how I looked at war, for sure.
okay. Well, that's a good viewpoint for sure, and, I mean, your compassion is coming out, and the more we talk, it just keeps
Yeah.
coming out. So when you were deployed to Afghanistan, what did you learn about yourself that surprised you?
I learned I can make really quick life-saving decisions on the spot with not a single thought, stress, or hesitation. That kind of surprised me, and I also learned that my endurance far exceeds my expectations.
That's awesome. So you were hyper aware of everything without even knowing it, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely, and part of my job was to go in, and as a female, the males couldn't actually, there's a couple of YouTubes out there, but the males couldn't go in and just speak to females right away. And so they would send us in and we'd make liaison and
Yeah.
have some food and talk. And there was one family that I went and asked them, "Can you please show me how to make food or bread or something?" And
Yeah.
that was a fun experience. Really, really did badly at it.
That's alright, you're
But
culinary in with it.
they had a great time. It was really fun to be able to share a joyful moment with local people being removed from a wartime scenario.
Yeah.
And knowing that we were secure enough in our perimeter, we were doing operationally, and that there were points of humanity within a wartime
I love that.
zone.
I love that. So you've spent over a decade in traditional therapy. At what point did you begin to feel something was missing?
So the last year I did kind of a talk therapy after about 10 years of it. I kind of had this epiphany moment of I'm so tired of asking for refills on medication. I'm so tired of coping, whatever it may be. And I need to wash myself of this. And so the opportunity came by that I could do hyperbaric chamber treatment, which is oxygen treatment of the brain. And I went, okay, well, what are your criteria? They said, well, you have to be clean and sober. You have to, do this. I said, perfect. And I'll get off all my medications too. And so I did 60 sessions of that. I did about 14 months of just clean, sober, everything out of my system outside of vitamins and supplements. And I had a lot of clarity, and I fired my therapist. And I said, you know what? I read a book called Waking the Tiger, which is over there. And what it revealed to me was that trauma is held in the body. We've all heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no idea how to apply that. Just knowing that. How do you apply those things? Nobody's teaching you that. They're telling you how to think, how to feel, what to say, write this down, sit in front of thunderstorms so you can desensitize yourself. I'm thinking this is all ridiculous. None of this is making me feel any different. It's making me angrier and more unheard.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was that point, firing my therapist, reading that book, and understanding that I am responsible for myself. I'm responsible for my own care, my own triage. And this is also what the Marine Corps teaches you too. You carry a medical pouch for your own self. It's not to be used on someone else. And so you must take care of yourself first. And so Peter Levine's book is based upon, he's a very science PhD guy and into Western medicine. And he was wondering why PTSD is so retained in our communities and even in our domestic animals. Why is it retained, but here are these herds in the wild, or these close calls, or these strange bonds in the wild don't have these things? Why is that? And so looking at it from a somatic kind of lens, what he discovered was, well, they process through the cycle. Let's say a lion takes out an antelope, but gets chased off by a baboon. And so the antelope gets up and looks like it's having a crazy seizure, and then kind of stumbles and walks and rejoins the herd and grazes. And what's that about? Well, that's the cycle completing. And so I went, well, why can't we have our cycles completing? What's going on? And even with something that isn't to do with trauma, but is just real life, if there's inner process, then we have a problem. Things get stuck and we're out of a flow state. And so that's kind of what brought me to this somatic healing point and the equisoma. And I was doing equine therapy at the time, very traditional, walk your horse around over this obstacle. How do you feel? I don't know. Fine.
Yeah.
It's an animal on a rope. I didn't grow up with horses. They weren't something I was thinking would be in my life. We had Arabians that lived down the road, interestingly enough. And I would play horses. I had horses, but it just wasn't in my background growing up. And so when it came back into being, I was very no, I don't want to do another equine therapy. I already had bad experience with service dog, no, this is going to be ridiculous. And they intimidated me. They were big. Yeah. They eat solid. They eat grass, and they can kill you. So to me, I went, I don't understand how this can be helpful if something that isn't even like me is supposed to help me. And yet I found more and more that they were helping me understand what I could manage and what was beyond my control. And so I had these experiences stack up, and then reading Peter Levine's book, combine the two, and I'm like, how do I put these two together? How do I put the horses with what I'm feeling and experiencing? How do I integrate this in? And I heard a podcast, Warwick Schiller's podcast, with Sarah Schlody, who offered the Ecosoma training. And I went, that's the way. And at the same time I had sent out my question, I was invited to Monty Roberts Ranch to do a veteran program. And I went, interesting. This is the only guy who does veteran programs with horses. And he's a nonviolent horse trainer, not really traditional. I don't know much about this guy. Again, not background in horse. What can I learn? So I'm like, how do I get these? It happened. They both were being carried at the same time. So I was like, started my studies and went out to Monty's where I met my Mustangs. So,
which is amazing. And little did you know that Monty was one of the most famous natural horsemen.
absolutely. I really didn't know. I ended up buying my Forerunner and best vehicle for a road trip and road tripped out there across the US, got to see a lot of really great places, cool farms. And when I drove up to Flag is Up Farms, which is what it was called at the time, I drove up there and there's just a canopy. There's roses that Pat had planted along the roadway. And my heart just opened and I went, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm home somewhere.
Amazing.
Like the receiving was just so beautiful.
That's awesome. So you sort of answered a couple of questions just by talking, but tell us about the first moment that you saw the Mustangs at Monty's Ranch. And was it instant? I feel like I already know the answer to this, but let's tell the listeners.
So, yeah, during that weekend retreat, the first lunch that we had like a little boxed lunch and we had about an hour. And so I was like, oh, I wonder what's back here. And somebody had told me, oh, those are the gentling pens for Mustangs. And I'm like, cool, I want to go back there. So I went back there and there are only 2 horses back there. And one was this colorful kind of little horse, snorted a lot, came to the fence, kind of pranced around. And
Curious,
then there was another one that was far in the back corner, as far away as they could get in the shadows, just kind of shrunk back. And I turned over a muck bucket away from their pens and just kind of sat there and ate my lunch and watched. And I knew right away, I went, these are my horses. Like, these are my horses. And I had no idea who they were, what their story was, if I could even adopt it, if they were even an option to adopt.
Yeah.
I had no idea, but I knew they belonged. They were part of my journey. How, I didn't know. And that was part of the manifesting that came when I was on my road trip was, I don't know, maybe I'll bring 1 or 2 horses back. I don't even have a horse trailer. I'm like, how am I saying this? Maybe I should be careful with my manifesting.
It's the best kind of manifesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Everything is meant to be is what I always say. And I believe that. So Zion is described as fiery and sort of try.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Tell us a
It
little bit
is.
about that.
Yeah. So he's part of the HMA roundup that they did in 2019, which was filmed by a lady named Ashley Avis. She has a organization called the Wild Beauty Foundation, and she is an advocate for wild Mustangs and wolves. So that was their owner previously. And so fast forward a few years after the roundup, I met them in 2023. So it had been a few years. He was a foal then, so he's grown up.
Yeah.
And now he's still kind of stuck in his full mentality because he hasn't been able to complete his cycle of life. Again, the cycle.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know much about them. And I decided to stay at Monty's longer and do the intro horsemanship course so I could learn how to properly use the dually equipment and how Monty trains, in a nonviolent way. And so I completed the Horsemanship 101 course and later on did my exams for that. So that was my foundation along with a wild horse gentling course. So I could be able to handle wild horses. And Monty actually had recognized that I really had no basis. I had no foundation. And instead of turning me away or making me feel humiliated or less than because I didn't have it, he saw it as a blank canvas that he could paint whatever he wanted on. And so he recognized that I was very curious and truly wanted to learn, not to question, but to really learn. And so he took me under his wing, invited me back to his property even after I completed the course. And he taught me how to work with his wild deer herd that he had at his property. And so working with the wild deer, he noticed that he's like, your movements are so jerky, they're choppy, you are turning this way and turning that way. And I started thinking, well, why would I be so choppy? Military training.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're drilling, you're taught to move in a certain way. And so he really helped me understand how to move fluidly and how to arc properly. And those things really expanded with the deer because they're a lot more touchy than a horse.
That's smart to start with the deer.
So starting with the deer really made me more comfortable with the Mustangs, and in turn, way comfortable with domestic, already trained horses that I was like, this is no problem. Not that I'm some wonderful top trainer by any stretch, but I am learning, and the learning is the journey. That's the joy of the journey. So having him teach me at such a good rudimentary level allowed me to explore other options on my own. So the deal was, once they get halter broken and we can trailer, then we can go. And that was the deal we made.
That's great. And the compassion. I mean, I feel like we both know another natural horseman.
Yeah.
And if I had one word to describe Pete Dillingham, it's compassionate. So
yes. What a joy to meet him.
Yes. So, all right. So let's go to Zephira. And she carries a visible scar. What has she taught you about earned trust?
So everyone always gravitated to Zion just because of how flashy and curious he is. And I saw so much of myself in Zephira.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Zephira.
I saw so much of myself, so much that was unheard, overlooked, and just trying to get by and tolerate and be in the back and just like, okay, this isn't my jam. And her tolerance was mistaken a lot for compliance. And to me, that was something that resonated deeply. So with her, what I did, I knew how shy she was. And so every single day for weeks that I was there at Flag, I would go each night to their pen and I would sit outside their pen. And it took me 6 weeks with her to finally get her to come from the corner all the way over and breathe on me. And I made the worst mistake. I turned to like, oh my goodness, there's a horse at my shoulder. Yes. I turned and she flew back, and it took another 2 weeks to get her back.
Well,
and
at least it wasn't 6.
Yeah. So she really trained me to be patient, to really know what wait means, and to really understand that waiting means wait for me. Don't wait for your timeline, but wait for me. And she has always been this way. She's very shy. She's very reserved, and she's very much attached to me. Even to this day, if strangers walk out into their pasture and I'm not with them, good luck getting them.
Yeah.
They won't be near you. So, but at the same time, I really appreciate that and them being able to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And she ran in the wild for 7 years. So she had been evading helicopter roundups for that long. She knows the value of keeping a wide distance. And that's interesting to me because there are 3 zones in a horse. There's their awareness zone, there's their decision zone, and the pressure zone. And they each one serves a different function, but a Mustang has a radius of 3 to 5 miles in their awareness bubble, their awareness zone. And so for me, that she not only did she help me with patience, she helped me understand I could feel safe for the first time. And no human had presented me the feeling of safety. And she helped me identify it, feel it, so I could actually truly feel that in other humans. And to me, that was such a valuable experience. Truly.
And I love hearing that because I recently lost my horse, as you know, that I had for 20 years. She was 30, but I learned so much from her. And people are like, do you ever ride her? And I'm like, no, not really. And the question is like, well, why do you have her? And I'm like, because I love her and she teaches me something every day,
yes.
And so I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
That
and
special bond.
It really adds so much value, and it's taught me how do I truly look at love? Like, what is love? I don't ride my children to show them I love them. That would be really interesting. So it's really changed my perspective on what is love, how to receive it, how to give it, and still have healthy boundaries. You don't see a horse not sure if they should get water because they made an error and, there had to be something else. Maybe they got electrocuted. Maybe there's some other adverse thing that was associated, but you don't see them because of their emotional state resisting something that's good for them, food and water.
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. And owning horses.
sorry for your loss.
I know. It's still hard. It's been a year and a half. So I say recently, but it's not recent.
It's recent in your heart.
It is. But, owning a horse, it does make you change your outlook on a lot of things. Like, I always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby. Well, I went, and it was, the experience was great, but did I love the pressure that the horses were? I mean, it's sort of you don't know what to think kind of thing. But,
it's true. Yeah.
So your Mustangs are a bonded pair, and you choose to honor that bond. How has that reshaped your understanding of attachments?
Well, it's definitely helped me understand what bonds are important for and what they're not important for. Having a horse that is so heavily bonded does make it difficult to work separately with them. That's just, everyone can see that.
Yes.
My question was, how do we change the mind of that? How do we change the picture to the horse? How would I see this as something I would like? Well, I have 2 children. Sometimes I take a son on a date. Sometimes I take a daughter on a date.
Yeah.
They're not always going together. And so that was my perspective shift for them, was sometimes you go here, sometimes you go there. But still, how do I change the picture in a small way each time that they may feel comfortable? And what really comes into play is herd support. So having 2 horses without herd support can actually be not as helpful.
Yes.
Because then you don't have a regulating herd member. And so having them in a larger herd that can kind of self-regulate, contain, or help mitigate some of those issues, like Zion's a fence pacer and he paces on the fence when he's anxious. And when we were in Virginia, we were in a larger herd of geldings. And so I paired him with another horse that would crib. And so the horse that would crib when he was anxious, my horse couldn't fence pace because he'd run into the cribber. And so both of them were very thinking, oh, I'm alone in my anxiety. And then they kind of bumped into each. Well, actually, we're not alone.
Yeah.
In our anxiety. Okay, I guess, you know what? Let's go graze. We're fine.
That's
brilliant. And it really worked itself out.
That is brilliant. So you've said this is not traditional equine therapy and not talk-based healing in a barn. So I feel like you've sort of told us a lot about what that is. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. So ideally, and this kind of, people have asked me before, how come you don't pursue, psychotherapy or some kind of medical license? And it doesn't call to me. It doesn't call to me. It puts me inside the box of red tape. And if I truly want to make a difference in veterans' lives, in Mustangs' lives, in my own life, I can't operate inside a box or inside red tape. I must be able to authentically reach in and be able to assist. And so that's one of the reasons I don't think certifications are bad or degrees are bad. I have a few of them.
Yeah.
But I do think that people nowadays are missing community more than ever. And we have so many different groups, so many different fractures of our community that what's the bond? What are we coming back to? What's the humanity? And so for me, that's what kind of drives this is our veterans are valuable and nobody tells them they're valuable. They might give them hush money, blood money from the government, and then tell you operate inside this box because you're disabled. Well, that's fine. But I still have these symptoms. Well, put them to work. And that's what I want to teach the veterans is that you can use your hypervigilance. A Mustang does all the time. It's what creates security and safety. And having a partner that has the same train of thought is wonderful. And so there's so many things that are not symptoms, but they're parts of our life. And how do we integrate them? So that's where the somatic integration transitions are. And that's kind of how I feel this has all led me to is there's different ways and types. Different people integrate things differently. Zion's a completely different horse than Zephira. And so they'll work differently with different people.
Yeah.
And so for me, being able to slow things down without stopping them is the crucial part of my work. A lot of the time, the cycle gets stopped from completing. And so it's more about, can we slow this cycle down to complete,
continue it,
and until it's fully complete. Yeah.
So you have partnered with a nonprofit and you have some amazing big ideas and
I do.
and things coming up. Tell us a little bit about what's your sort of business plan, just this.
Yes.
You don't have to get into too much detail.
So ideally, with all my moving around, learning and applying these different skills, I have paired with a group called Harmonetics Project, run by Jeff Zimmerman. And he does a lot of the same work, but a little more in depth. And so I want to work with him. He designated me as the equine director for Harmonetics and said, you need to find a place. Let's help you if we can. And we'll get our investment team working on it as well and network. And he said, find a place that works for you. And we decided that building from the ground up is going to be not quite the right way to launch. And so looking for something that is already there, a legacy property of some kind that has already revenue built in, has a working system that's already running smoothly. That's kind of what I'm looking for to set the foundation and integrate a launch of the veteran program. And so for me, finding a property that works is very niche. It's a very narrow scope. And so just being able to look at different properties and go, I like this layout, but this doesn't work. Or I like that, but I don't like the people. Or this is not good, or this is excellent.
Yeah.
And having a legacy property is important to me specifically because I watched what happens when it falls into the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that hurt my heart deeply. I couldn't stand by and watch that happen because of how I was raised and how I was raised in the Marine Corps with honor, integrity, respect for your elders, for your peers, what people have built. They always tell you respect the rank. It doesn't necessarily mean the person.
Yes.
But one day you want to be that rank. So respect the rank. And that's the part that I saw was all these things that had been built up over a course of somebody's lifetime just being gone like that. And that hurt because life is already fragile and short. And so being able to fulfill a role as a steward of something that somebody else built, to truly carry it forward, not to modify, but to carry it forward and integrate a life-saving measure, I don't see what else there is to say.
It is a win-win. And we're a lot alike in different. We're different, but we're a lot alike. And so my niche as far as, econ properties and farms is based on a lot of what you just said, being a steward and finding the right fit for something that somebody's put their heart and soul into.
Yes.
And, it's not just going to turn into a development or, the way things happen a lot of times. So, all right. And we won't go into too much of your program because when it started, that's when we're going to come back and do the podcast on that.
I love that.
You speak about land like it's sacred. Why does your rootedness matter for your nervous system? That's
a really big one. I feel like the land and land stewardship is essential to controlled chaos. An untamed horse, not contained, is a dangerous one to themselves and others. And so for me, knowing that I have traveled, I've searched, I've learned, I've applied, I continue to learn. I have a strong desire to continue to educate and learn for myself, for my horses. Having a solid place to call my own, to call home, even for a short time in this life, would mean everything to me. And I know from having my own home prior, it was wonderful to have a place to call home and to come home to and to explore out and come back. And that's part of the integration of the somatic healing is you can't complete a cycle without a starting point. And so having a starting point to complete that cycle and integrate is everything.
That absolutely makes sense. For someone who feels sort of unanchored right now, what's the first step towards rootedness? And I feel like, finding that place is probably it.
Finding that place, yeah. It really is. And where I'm at now is a wonderful transition. It's full of rest. There's rejuvenation here in this land. There's always crystals that pop up here in this area of North Carolina.
Yeah, Mill Spring
And
is a very
it's
beautiful place.
lovely. And so I really have enjoyed being here and taking the time that is needed to find the right fit. I think we've spoken about this before, but alignment is everything, and not
Yes.
forcing it. Force is not the way to go, but just aligning and what works and what doesn't work, and how do we make things work if they're meant to work.
And your calmness and your not rushing of things, I think is gonna get you there quicker than if you were, just like
Yes.
really chaotic about trying
Yes.
to find it.
Well, there's the old saying of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait.
And
Yes.
so, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, pretty much. And so this whole entire being here where I'm at in this transitional pivotal point is good because it allows me to go, where's my security? My security is here. My security is in my herd, and things will come. Things will align.
And you're correct, it will. Suicide awareness is something that people do not talk about enough. And you lost 2 friends this past summer. When you look at veteran suicide numbers still rising, what question burns in you?
Why isn't anybody taking action? That's my one question. Why are we're all now aware and the deaths keep coming. What are we doing about it? And the same thing with the Mustangs. If you take a watch of Wild Beauty, the same thing is happening, but people are unaware because it's not in your front yard.
That's true.
But why are the Mustangs still being sent to slaughter pipelines? Why are they still being rounded up when we have more horses in holding than we have on the range? And so to me, if you start expanding your picture bigger and bigger, what is that bigger picture? It sure doesn't look very positive.
No.
And so for me, I think the biggest thing is just where's the action? And so that's why I think finding that right aligned place, the right legacy to carry forward as a foundation is the right way to go to launch something that works. And losing those 2 friends, one of them I deployed with and one of them I drowned in the Grand Canyon with. And both of them made me realize you need to find a spot quickly. You need to find a spot quickly because this is costing.
Nobody's doing anything.
Nobody's doing anything, and you can study all day, but what are you doing? And it made me reevaluate, what am I doing? Am I saving my own life some days? Some days, yes. And that's okay. That still counts.
It does count.
And
you have to do that to help anybody else.
But to do that, I have to be able to have a place that's a foundation. And so that's the crucial
And I'm
point.
hoping I'm going to help you find that.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
We met for a reason.
Absolutely.
And so I feel that is absolutely possible. So is it possible that what both horses and veterans crave most is safe belonging?
Yes. I think that's a very fair statement, and being heard and knowing that there's a place that's safe for them in the felt sense. What feels safe to me may feel different for you.
It's true. It's true. If a veteran is listening right now and feeling numb, what would you want them to know?
I got you.
That's simply said, and I mean, you don't need any more, for sure. What has Zion taught you about fire?
That horse terrified me the first time I met him. He really did. And one of my really good friends took him for 4 months, and he came back a different horse, a horse that was safe, I could work with, and was ready to work with me.
That's a good friend, yes.
She is an exceptional horsewoman.
Is she the one that you're talking about joining?
I want to have her to my property someday.
Yeah.
She's over in England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she really turned things around for him. He was really more confused than anything and felt he had to protect himself. And the one thing that he has taught me is to recognize in him, I didn't see him as a dangerous horse. I wanted to ask him why he restrained himself so much when he had so many opportunities. Why did you restrain yourself? I wouldn't have. And so for me, he taught me the value of restraint over violence. And for a horse that was already given multiple not good reviews,
Yes.
to me that was valuable. Is he taught me restraint is something you can do under pressure, and reminded me that I'm already trained for that. He already sees that in me, and can I bring that to the table for him and for stabilizing?
That's awesome. And what has Zephira taught you about softness?
Not all softness is willing.
That's well said and well understood for sure. Okay, so we have a little lightning round, which is sort of lightens it up a little bit. And I
Sure.
appreciate all of this great information that you've given today. So, coffee on the porch or sunrise in the pasture?
Sunrise in the pasture.
Dirt under your boots or sand under your feet?
Dirt under my boots.
One sound that instantly regulates your nervous system.
When my horses call to me.
They speak directly to you,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so the last one is cornbread, and I usually ask sweet or savory, but you told me a story earlier about the first time that you had cornbread. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So I went down to southern Georgia at a little family reunion, and we had a whole big southern spread. And that was the first time I tried cornbread, southern cornbread, and it was what is called crackling cornbread. And I had no idea what was in it. I had no idea where it came from, how to make it. I just knew it was really delicious. It was very unique in its flavor. And it was something I wanted to learn how to make. And so with my culinary background, I definitely have gotten a recipe that works for me now.
That's awesome.
And that was my experience with cornbread.
Yeah, crackling cornbread. And for those that don't know what crackling is crispy fried pork fat. It's really, really delicious. So, and salty.
Yes, yes.
Salty.
So it's just kind of melded into the cornbread itself, and each bite you get a little bit of that.
It's amazing.
It's delicious.
Well, we appreciate you talking to us today and enlightening us a little bit about what's coming from you. And we'll definitely come back and have another podcast once everything's going and you're rooted in your spot. And we can't wait.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for having me on. It's
That's
been
right.
a joy.
until next time, farewell. God bless y'all. And don't forget to thank a farmer.